Welcome to Coding After Work stream. Before we start, we would like to thank our sponsors, Progress Telerik. They have amazing Blazor UI components with actually over 75 Blazor components in there. If you're working with Blazor, you should definitely give that a try. We will add a link in the chat. If you don't already follow us on YouTube, please click this subscribe button and the bell.
Over at YouTube.
Over at YouTube. Yep. That's true.
Important.
Do not try to click the video. We would love to. If you do, you will get a notification whenever we post a video.
And we have even more news today.
We do?
We do. We have just opened our merch store. So if you want to support us and get off some swag, feel free to get some merch. All donations and profits will go towards the stream for gear and software and all that, so we can spread even more knowledge. And anything is appreciated, of course. But I didn't tell the whole truth, actually. I withheld a thing. And I know we usually keep it very casual and light in our streams, but for just a minute, let's take it down a little and be a little bit more serious, because we are so proud to have such an inclusive community with people from all kinds of walks of life, shapes, colors, sizes, you name it. And we're also aware that we are pretty privileged. We are two straight, white, cis people living in the Western world. Unfortunately, everybody isn't as privileged. And that is why we have released our kitty corn to the merch store. And I love kitty corn. I
can almost tell.
Yeah, and it's actually based off of our cat, Sputnik. All profit that comes from any kitty corn merch will go to a fundraising organization that strengthens LGBTQ plus individuals' rights in the world. And if you want to know more, you can use the RFSL or kitty corn command in the chat. But now, we have code.
We have
a
code.
guest.
We have a guest.
We have .NET MAUI. And I'm wearing this shirt for it. Well, the closest thing I could get.
I love it. It's beautiful.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you inviting me on. So hello, everybody. I'm David, Program Manager with Microsoft, working on .NET MAUI.
and I know you are working with a lot of preview stuff right now.
I am. And while you were giving that wonderful intro, I actually got something up on my screen. So
yay!
We're saved.
Well, that's good. That's good. What do you want to show us today? Or should we start with what's MAUI? Does everybody know what MAUI is?
MAUI is an island. .NET MAUI, though.
So I totally missed.
Yep. You did.
Yeah, sorry.
You just need to take a .NET pin or sticker and just slap it right,
Oh, we have stickers.
We can brand anything.
Hold on.
Right? I'm not the brand police, though, so. Cool. And, before I even dive in, I wanted to show everybody I have a pants cam. I'm well known for having a pants cam, but for this special occasion, I turned it on to my Lego cam. So I set up a little studio. Cam. This is a live shot. This is not a
drill.
Not a drill. A live shot. And for front end day, I received this beautiful little gift with, you can see that it has two cameras there, one for the pants cam down below, the green, and one for the actual camera. It's basically my setup if I were a Lego character, including the fact that you can't really tell, but I'm not wearing pants as a Lego figure. I am, however, wearing pants as a real human being. So
there you go.
Important details. So I wanted to make sure I thank you very much for that gift. And I look forward to hopefully more of those conferences, if nothing else, so we can do coding after work, or in my case, coding during work, which spans 24 hours a day, regardless. I'm always working. So.
We are talking about doing a new .NET front-end day, so
Okay, good,
We
good.
are.
Well,
Somewhere
you
in the
don't have
future.
to, but if you want to, there's plenty of.
Well, we had a lot of fun. We
Yeah.
did have a lot of fun, and the content was great. So
Well, after having been at home now for a longer period of time, I'm ready to travel. So you feel free to just let me know where to be, when to be there, and Uncle Bill will fly me over. Cool. Yeah. So .NET MAUI. So this is the next version of how you build client apps with .NET coming in .NET 6. We've been previewing this. Have you all had a chance to look at our previews?
I have looked at them,
All right.
but I have installed them. That's basically where I am right now.
yeah, you
Me
chickened
too.
out because you had a class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm currently writing a Blazor book, or actually I'm not currently writing it anymore. It's
You're
done.
currently done.
So I
Good,
didn't want to install any preview bits, and I had a class last week, so I didn't want to ruin it with any .NET 6 stuff.
Risk it, not ruin
yeah,
it.
that's true. That's true.
No, yeah, I completely understand. And I have been installing all the bits myself. The good news is Blazor is so hot, and we even have some wonderful Blazor integration with .NET MAUI. So
Nice.
plenty of goodness, whether you are coming from a web development background and or you need to, take stuff to the web, or from a XAML client application background, or a pure C# background. We've got it all, right? We've got it all.
That's
All right. So what would you like me to do? I can share my screen.
Yeah,
We can
let's do
dive
that.
in. I realize now I hadn't shared my screen already. Y'all are like, is he going to share his screen? What's going on? So
There we go. We see a
Yeah,
screen.
there we go. Nice. Oh, I get to be on the top.
Yeah.
So I will. Here's what we'll do. I'll give an introduction to .NET MAUI, talk a bit about things, show some code. You can see I've got some things running, so thank the demo gods for that. But y'all jump in. Feel free to ask questions at any point. And I will gladly go down the rabbit hole, and we can just talk. So, what you're seeing here on the screen is a WinUI project reunion application running our Weather 21 demo that we showed at Microsoft Build end of last month. And so, a couple of things happening here. You can see that my wind indicator is animating. We've got some beautiful. If I can scroll. Going from touch screens to using my mouse and learning how to re-scroll again takes a bit of doing. But you can see we've got some horizontal scrolls down there. We've got some vertical scrolls over here. We got a resizing UI. And of course, there's more things that can be added and done here. But this is a nice start, and it really only was a couple days of investment to put together a good-looking UI. And really, the goal of this project is both to show something decent looking, but also to kind of just give you a gauge of where things stand in the development of .NET MAUI. So let me go to a PowerPoint. I got a couple PowerPoints I can choose from here. Let's go with not that one, not that one. Let's go with this one.
Randomize it.
The thing is, like the way I use presentations, I don't use them as, hey, I'm going to go from beginning to end. They're more like I got cards, and I'll just throw cards out there and let's talk through these things. So .NET MAUI is intended to be, and we are definitely working towards this. This is the vision statement. The most productive way to develop native apps that perform great on any device running Android, iOS, macOS, or Windows from a single code base. So we're really focusing on, the things that we have, as we've talked to developers over the years, and we've looked at how companies do applications that work in many different places, whether it is mobile, desktop, spanning operating systems, as well as when they have web investments. What are the things that you struggle with on a day-to-day basis, or that just chew up time? And how can we improve those things to get you where you need to be? So in terms of productivity, what are we doing? So in .NET 6, we're introducing .NET Hot Reload. This goes from what you have today in Xamarin.Forms and in UWP, where you have XAML Hot Reload. I think this actually works in WPF also. And we're adding C# method body replacement. So what this really means is that you can go into a running application and you can go into any of your C# and you can add code. And then you can hit an apply changes button without even committing that code, without saving that file whatsoever. It's going to patch your running application. And then the next time that you trigger that code path, it's going to run the new code.
Wait, you said without even saving?
You don't even have to save the file. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. So, I mean, I personally, I'm a file saver. I like to save my files. And so this is not actually my preferred method, but a lot of people do appreciate this way. So you actually have this a similar mode today with XAML where you can, by default, I think it is, as you're coding, as soon as it sees that you have valid syntax, it goes ahead and hot reloads that change into your running application. You have the option to change that to be on save, which I don't know. It's just a gesture of Command S, Control S that I prefer.
Yeah.
But similarly, we will be checking your code as you're writing it. And as soon as it's valid, when you hit that apply changes, any of your valid code will get applied. If that code is not valid, it should warn you, stop you, and say, hey, thanks for trying to apply your changes, but you may want to reconsider. So that is coming in .NET 6, and we think that's going to make people super, super productive because then you're just reducing the number of times you have to stop running in your application. And MAUI gets first-class support for all of this. This also applies to Razor and CSS. Jimmy, you'll be very happy to see that. Yeah. So you do get this today with the early previews of Blazor, and there is some support for .NET Watch that allows you to do this from the command line. But I'll tell you right now that we are optimizing for the Visual Studio experience. So that means that the command line experience for doing hot reload and things like this may work to a degree, but depending on how much time we have, and time is starting to run short because we're getting pretty close to our release candidates and then our GA, some of those things may not get completely polished. So absolutely optimizing for the Visual Studio experience. And I think that's helpful for everybody to know and understand so that you don't go into it with some higher expectations for command line support.
But when you're saying the Visual Studio experience, are we talking about the full suite? Are we talking about for Mac code?
So I am talking about Visual Studio itself, so not VS Code. VS Code for me falls in line with the, and maybe this is the wrong way to think about it, but it falls in line with your command line experience.
All right, fair enough.
So especially for client application development, I know this isn't so much the case with Blazor and web development, but we think very much in terms of Visual Studio because you want to have the profiling tools, you want to have the property panels and the live visual tree and things like that, that you come to expect. Sorry, the dogs are about to bark, but we are also doing, in terms of productivity, Windows plus iOS device, and that's all you need to build your iOS applications. So, of course, MAUI is Android, iOS, Mac OS, and Windows. And with this feature, which we've called Hot Restart in other places, I don't know if we'll continue to call it Hot Restart, but if you hear that phrase, that's what we're talking about. And so for your day-to-day development, this is a very productive way to do your work. You don't need a Mac. And then when you do come to publish, you can either use a cloud-hosted service or you can connect to a Mac build host, and you can do that. We know that some developers really enjoy using Windows with a Mac build host on their network because then they can use a remote simulator. And you can use the remote simulator with a touch device like a Windows Surface or a Dell XPS, which is what I have. So that will also continue to work. The Mac build host will still be there as an option for developers who use that today. And although I am introducing .NET MAUI as a new product to everybody, I should acknowledge that it is actually based on a 7-year-old code base of Xamarin.Forms, and then a 10+ year code base of Xamarin with Android, iOS, and Mac OS. So it's new. And we're doing some really exciting things architecturally based on everything we've learned over those past 7 years. But at the same time, it's very battle tested and proven in terms of whether you're building for the App Store as a consumer, or you are doing enterprise development internally, or B2B, B2C, et cetera, et cetera. So it's rich. All right. The next productivity thing here is single project. And I'll show more of that maybe in the demos, but it's a consolidation of the things you need to worry about in your Solution Explorer. And I'll dig into some of those features when I look at the code. I mentioned some architectural changes, and so we're going for handlers as opposed to the old renderer architecture. To override a renderer, you would end up creating 2, 3, 4 classes, depending on how many platforms you're targeting, and re-implementing that logic over and over and over. With handlers, it's much, much easier. You can do it all from the single multi-targeted project. And the syntax is very simple. You just access that handler in the property dictionary for the control or the base of that control that you want to deal with. And I'll show you some examples of that. And then we also have the MAUI graphics project, which is experimental. It's a standardizing that we're doing on a cross-platform abstraction of graphics APIs. So rather than adopting just the Windows API, we are using this, and this is actually another code base that's been around a while, but we have brought it into .NET and we're standardizing on it. It allows us to use the native graphics engines on each platform. So, Apple has theirs, Google has theirs, Windows, Mac. And so we can use all that native stuff. That means that your application can remain light and use the most performant graphics engine for that platform, but with a consistent API. So you create your drawing once and it works everywhere.
Nice.
We have another experiment that adds controls to this, but that is something that is not going to unfortunately be part of .NET 6. We'll hopefully have some experimental controls that you can use because not only they're easier to use, but you get a huge performance benefit when you do use them. It's upwards of like 400% faster UI for those controls.
We like that.
Yeah, right. 400% sounds pretty good, especially for performance. And one of the cool things, and you can go up to the .NET Microsoft.maui.graphics.controls repo, just search for it, you'll find it. You can actually see some of our composite controls that use drawing for a lot of the UI, but they keep the platform native control in there, like for an entry, so that we don't have to re-implement all the logic that makes up a text input, right? So that's some pretty cool stuff. And then, of course, you get all the Visual Studio things. From a performance standpoint, I'll kind of speed through these so that we can get to some code. I didn't bring you here to show you white slides. But there's all these things that we're doing to improve performance overall. Currently, our benchmarks are pretty consistent with where we were with Xamarin.Forms. We know that we should be faster, and so hopefully in the near future, we'll get AOT up and running for like preview 6 of .NET 6. We hope for it to be there. And then we'll start to tune our performance, make sure that the linker is doing all that it can do, because everything in MAUI should be linker safe. Everything should be optimized to not use reflection. And again, every renderer, every control is on the fast path as opposed to the old renderer system. So lots of cool stuff happening there for performance. In terms of the single code base, it's really multi-targeting is kind of the heart of it. You get images, fonts, and raw assets all in one spot. If you've developed applications where you're targeting multiple platforms, you know the frustration of having to prepare assets for each individual platform. It can be a huge hassle. So now I mentioned this. It is the evolution of Xamarin.Forms, and it's really being rebuilt from the ground up for performance and extensibility. There are some things that will come straight over from Xamarin.Forms, like some of the heavier controls, or the bigger controls, I shouldn't say heavier, but they're newer because when we wrote them in Xamarin.Forms, we had already adopted some of these new fast renderer principles. Let's see here. So this is the part where I skip slides. Slides. There are some architectural things in here. I mentioned this, so I think this would be worth looking at. I mentioned the handler being a whole lot lighter than a custom renderer. So if you've written a custom renderer, like I said, it's 3-4 classes sometimes. It's a bunch of code. You have different methods you have to override, and you're not necessarily sure where you're doing things. In this case, you never have to leave your MAUI project. You can do it all there because it's using multi-targeting. You can choose how you want to implement multi-targeting. In this case, I'm using the if-defs. That's that pound if, and these are compiler directives. So conditional compile options. I'm accessing the entry handler. You have a static class here, handlers, with all the handlers you can reference directly. I'm accessing the mapper, which is going to take your properties and map it to the implementation handler for it. And so I'm looking for when the background color is being handled, and then I'm overriding it to essentially, in this case, remove the underline from an entry on Android specifically, which I hate that little goatee thing. It's not, I don't like it. So that was my favorite thing to show. So the if-def is platform specific. I access the handler right there. This is the dictionary of all the properties, and then I'm done. In this example, and you see, it's just like what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines. And if you get rid of the curlies and you make them hug, right? And you bring them all the way up.
Oh, I love that expression. You make them hug.
Make them hug. Then it's even less lines of code, right? In this case, we're actually overriding the view handler, which is pretty high up the hierarchy of controls. And so this is actually going to apply to every view control. And if you've ever used Stephen Thwisson's or Debug Rainbows, it's a really cool little plugin you can use. It's on Nougat, and you just flip a bit in the header of your page, and it gives a random background color to every control in your UI. Well, I re-implemented this. Oh, it's for debug purposes, right? Because you're like, what are the bounds of this thing? Now, what I did, which I think was even better, is I chose a more pleasant color scheme that was complementary colors. And anyway, so you can see just how easy this is. So anytime any view mapper is realized in MAUI, it's going to apply a random background color. And you can turn this on and off. And with C# hot reload, it's super, super easy for you to implement these things on the fly without having to rebuild. So pretty cool stuff. So in terms of handlers and how much code there is in a handler, you can see it is really not much code just to implement a single property. And you can do them and compose them just about however you want to. So very cool stuff. Let's see here. Are there any other slides I wanted to hit upon? I mentioned the experimental graphics. This is a screenshot here from Javier on the engineering team of the work he has done to bring material design, Fluent UI, and Cupertino design to controls using that shared graphics library that I was referring to. So those are the repos there at the bottom of the screen. You can totally go check that out. And if you happen to want to contribute to it, your contributions would be very welcome. Because like I said, we would like to have an experimental version of this library out by GA. It's just not going to be first class in the box by that time. We want to make sure, of course, that we work on our quality and have a really nice, stable product when we come to launch. All right. And you know all about experimental mobile Blazor bindings, right?
Well, we actually did get a question from Daniel before. Let me pull it up. He had to run, but I'm to tell you that we want Blazor mobile bindings to be a part of MAUI.
That's fantastic.
And I think he's not the only one.
No.
I think there's more of where that came from.
Yeah. So to catch everybody up on exactly what this is slightly different than, or actually quite a bit different than what we're actually shipping. What we're shipping is .NET MAUI Blazor in .NET 6. And what that is it's the Blazor web view, hosted inside of a .NET MAUI native application. And so you can take an existing client server, WebAssembly, whatever, Blazor application, and it runs self-contained in a native app. And then you can augment your web UI with native UI as you need to. But you immediately, instantly get access to all the platform stuff that you would have in a regular native application. So you can really think of it as the .NET of Electron, although it's not Electron.net. And from our early tests, the memory footprint is amazing. It's really good. The performance looks excellent. So we're going to be definitely doing a lot more of those comparisons moving forward. Now, what the mobile Blazor bindings mobile Blazor bindings, I always get the words flipped over. What this is taking the Blazor component model and wrapping MAUI controls. So you use Razor, but you're not using web elements, web components. You're using native components or MAUI components. So when I'm writing a Razor template, I would be using stack layouts and grids for my layouts. I would be using buttons and entries and editors and even web view controls. I would be using native controls, but it is Razor syntax. And what I really like about it, it reminds me of the old Adobe Flex days, which I fondly think upon. Although I did because Flash Player died at the end of December and something so Twitter was having a mourning period. And so I brought back some of my old Flex projects and I was like, do I actually enjoy it today as much as I think I did back then? Kind of one of those things, or have I romanticized the past? And
so did you?
So I did enjoy it, but I could definitely tell that some of the action script patterns needed to be modernized. We have come up with some better ways. Basically, that C# is better than ActionScript, which, no duh. But I needed that experiment to tell me that. But what I did like about it is you could always, for the most part, not quite as much as Razor, but you could have your script in line with your XML markup. So MXML was the layout framework, language, whatever. And then you had ActionScript, and you could have code blocks and things like that. I really do like the Razor approach of having C# right there in line with your components, with your Razor XML markup. I think that's a great blend. I don't know that everybody agrees. I think those who have been using XAML for a very long time might find it a little too weird because you kind of get that dirty feeling, I think, when you see C# in your XAML. They do. I don't. I think it's fantastic. I think I'm a what do you call those things? Reese's peanut butter cup kind of guy. I want my peanut butter and my chocolate together. I think that they're better together. I think everybody needs to agree upon that. They should not be kept separate. And as a matter of fact, if you want to bring a banana into that mix, I'm totally fine with that as well. So just throwing that out there, and a root beer on the side, just all those things together. So anyway, yeah. So
having worked with both of them, I would
not the peanut butter.
No, definitely not the peanut butter. Having worked with both Blazor and with XAML, I would probably choose XAML.
You would? Why?
Honest.
Tell me more.
It's kind of what you're saying. It feels a little bit dirty, having the mix of. I mean, mobile Blazor binding reminds a lot from XAML, and mobile bindings looks kind of the same, but then we can just throw in some C#.
But do you think it's something that you can get used to? It's just the mindset of things.
I don't think I would mind either, but I think I've been working with XAML for so long, so I probably would.
It's in your fingers.
Yeah, probably fall back into that.
Yeah, makes sense.
I think that having C# and XAML all together in one file reinforces that they are just two ways to express exactly the same thing. I think a lot of developers, they see XAML and then they have a C# file, but they're completely separated from each other. They think that they're different things and that there's some, I don't know, magical boundary or fundamental difference, wherein XAML actually is just a XML representation of the same thing you would write in C#. And once compiled
Well,
and
when you
running,
put it like that,
it's the same thing. It's just like, how do you want to do it, right? Like I can, yeah. So I agree. I think that the reason, though, that I would prefer it is just I hate writing converters. And not only do I
Okay,
hate
I
writing
feel
value
you.
converters, but I also, there are just things that are easier to do in C#. So why give me an artificial barrier to making it easy? That's my problem. Yeah.
Fair
So
enough.
there you go.
Fair enough.
However, I don't serve me, I serve the customer as the program manager of the product. So there we have
but
it.
it's good to have choices.
It is good
like
to have
that.
choices. It's certainly good for advanced developers to have choices. And then we just need to make sure that we provide good guidance for new developers coming into the platform so that we reduce barriers. Because especially for Maui, which is multi-platform, if you throw all 4 platforms in the face at the same time, that's overwhelming. That's like a lot of information to try to figure out. Like it's hard enough to build for one device aesthetic and user experience to then say, okay, well, now you've got 4. And by the way, it just exponentially grows with different screen sizes. And then suddenly people start coming out with dual screens. And it's like, well, wait a second. I just got used to having one screen. And then now that we're on desktop, now it's multi-windows and things like that. So dog's freaking out. All right. So I want to, if you don't mind,
No, he was
walk through
excited about
a
Maui.
Maui application and kind of show how things are constructed, because it's a bit different if you've used Xamarin.Forms from what you may have experienced. But we are unifying on .NET existing patterns and also working with like the ASP.NET team on how we evolve and move forward with some of our common patterns. And one of those common patterns is how your application starts up and how you configure your application, right? So we have adopted the Microsoft Extensions Host Builder pattern, and you see this pretty commonly in ASP.NET. And I believe it's in Blazor too, but it's not quite as in your face with Blazor, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So it's kind of there, but you're not really, forced to use it. But there is typically quite a bit of setup that you may want to end up doing when you're working with native platforms and you're going across platforms. For example, when you're setting up essentials to do things like GPS or is my device connected to the internet connectivity type things, or accessing other sensors on the device. And typically you would need to go into each different platform. And so if I look here, and I'm actually on iOS, so if I go to Android, I know what I should do. I should go show all files. I'm getting used to this multi-targeting world that we're now in. So don't look to me as your beacon of perfection in terms of developer experience here. So I'm working through this. So I turned on show all files over here, and actually maybe I should zoom. Whatever the short, what's the short? Not that zoom. What's the zoom tool?
The
How do I
other
do
Zoom.
that? Just Window plus. There we go.
Yeah.
Window plus. Wow, that's all pixelated. Did that actually zoom for you, or did it just zoom my
No.
screen? Didn't zoom for you. Son of a. All right. Sorry. I can't zoom for you. All right. So what I did was I clicked the show all files because I'm multi-targeted. So it wasn't showing me some of the files because my project is set up to run WinUI instead of Android. I think that's what it is. Okay. So let's take Android, for example. So an Android application starts up with the application, and then the first window it's going to give you is the main activity. So unless you configure it to do a splash activity, but by default, main activity is your first window of an Android application. So main activity is where, main application is where Maui starts. And you'll see that we have a base class here, Maui application, and we're passing in that startup class. It doesn't have to be called startup. You can call it whatever you want to, but it needs to handle initializing your application. And so this is the pattern that I've been referring to that is part of the host builder. So passing in startup, we expose a configure method, and the host builder is going to call this. And when it does, we're going to do a couple of things. This code's a bit old because it's based on Preview 4, and Preview 5 will not have this. But in Preview 4, I needed to call use forms compatibility because it's relying upon some things that are part of Xamarin.Forms and have not been ported yet to Maui. In Preview 5, these things are all built into Maui or are part of the Maui compatibility package, and so I won't need it anymore. Use Maui app is what is actually going to say, okay, now when you run, the thing you're going to run is app. And we'll take a look at what app is. It's over here in just a moment. And then I can do a bunch of other things in here. And one of the things that I typically will do is I will configure my fonts. Now, my fonts exist over in this resources folder, and this is part of the single project experience. In single project, I can put all of my fonts in this folder. I can put all of my images in this folder, and you can see I'm actually using an SVG. These can be PNGs, JPGs, bitmaps, I suppose, would work, although I would not recommend a bitmap. But, you know, hey, maybe Paint is your go-to design tool. And right, you're going to do some 8-bit art or something. I don't know. So the cool thing is we can actually configure our project with wildcards so that anything you drop into these folders is recognized as either a font or an image. And all of my images in here, Maui and the single project will actually generate all the DPI sizes for every platform that you're targeting. It does this as a build task, and it should only run once until you've modified something. It'll recognize that you've dirtied your images folder, and it needs to do a clean and reset those. And then, of course, you can always manually retrigger it to generate those. So that's a heck of a time savings. It's really a sweet feature. And I'll show you what that looks like over here by editing my project file. So I've got this item group here. And you can see that I've got a Maui image. Now, this Maui image is a little special in that I have said, this is my app icon. And so I say, this is the image to include, and that's going to be the background. And then I can actually give this additional property for a foreground, which is important on Android because of the way that they handle app icons. And so this is a pretty straightforward thing. It's part of our templates, and you just get that for free. All the rest of my images, I'm using that wildcard I just mentioned. And so anything I drop into that resources images folder, it automatically gets picked up. That's the last thing I need to do. I can just reference everything by name in my application, and I am super happy. And then we also have this. This is new in Preview 4. It's the Maui splash screen. So it's a special kind of Maui image, and it takes a background color and a image of whatever kind. So this image is going to, by default, be centered into the splash screen. And so this is your super quick getting started. As soon as your application launches for the very first time, this is the thing that's going to, as quick as possible, display to the user before it goes on to your first screen. And then just like with Maui images, I have that wildcard for fonts, and it's going to drop everything in here. So in future versions of Visual Studio, and this is the default, you don't have to actually come into your CS Proj and do this stuff yourself. It's there for you. And I'm just showing this by way of explanation. But in future versions of Visual Studio, you will be able to select and modify these things in your property panel down here. But that's just it's not quite there yet. We're working on this new thing called Visual Studio 2022. So there's a lot of activity happening in the IDE world right now. Cool. So I mentioned that Use Maui app is going to initialize the app. And app is the same app that we've always had for the most part. We did kind of rewrite it. But this is your application. This is your Maui application. The main job of the Maui application is to create your window. So we're set up for multi-window development, which of course on Android and iOS doesn't really matter. There are some Android devices that can handle multiple windows. There are some iPad scenarios where you can do multiple windows. But this really isn't something we've ever had in our toolkit before. And so we have the architecture for it now. We haven't yet implemented multiple windows, but one window is what you get for now. And then when we start needing multiple windows, then we'll add multiple windows.
What about the Surface Duo and stuff like that?
But that's dual screen, not multiple windows.
Well, yeah. So it is dual screen. So the way that you typically work with that today is you use the 2-pane view control, and we have a Xamarin.Forms dual screen NuGet package. And so Craig Dunn, who's the Android evangelist, I don't think they call them evangelists. He's a developer advocate. There we go. That's probably the right term. He has been working on that stuff, and he is working with Shane on our team to bring that to .NET MAUI as well. So the 2-pane view essentially is something that's aware of that duality of screens, but it is effectively one application window. Now, once we do have this, however, there are some scenarios where it may make sense for you to actually spawn a second window, which is going to run in its own thread, it's going to have its own context, et cetera, et cetera. And then you could interact between your windows on a Duo as well. Similarly, on an iPad, you can do this today on an iPad too. Right now on an iPad, when you do this with a Xamarin.Forms application or a Xamarin iOS application, you're actually ending up with 2 instances of your application. But you're kind of pretending like they're separate windows. But it's actually not a common thing I see a lot of developers asking for or doing on those devices. So if you are one of those developers and you're like, what do you mean you haven't heard from anybody? I need this. Email me, tweet at me, let's talk, so I can understand your scenario and we can make sure it's supported. All right. So create window is what's going to actually launch everything. And then these 2 lines right here are going to go away. So just pretend you don't even see them. They're there right now for expediency as we're in development. But maybe by preview 6, those will be gone and you'll be left with just one beautiful line, which is, here's my window, give my window some content to show to the user. And in this case, the content is a main page. This content could be a navigation page. As a matter of fact, maybe for comparison, let me go back to the weather application, which is still running. Sweet. Didn't crash or anything. It doesn't, I actually haven't had problems with. I had the weather application actually running for like a whole weekend. And I came back to it on a Monday and I was like, oh, sweet. It's still running. It's like one of those accidental long, there was no memory
Performance
leaks.
test.
Yeah, there were no memory leaks. My machine wasn't on fire. It was awesome.
That's
unlike
always
my
good.
3D printer back here, which had a thermal, what is it? That thermal shutdown or whatever, where it detects
no.
if it's going to get too hot and it just shuts itself down.
Yeah, we've had that happen as well. One
Yeah.
of the nozzles overheated and
Yeah,
messed up.
yeah. I had to replace a nozzle for the first time. I'd never had to replace one before, but I was getting such bad prints that I was like, okay, maybe this is a nozzle thing. And sure enough, this seems to have fixed it. All right, so for comparison, this is, obviously a bit more code over here. And so if we look at our startup, because that's the first place to look, you can see I've got some more things happening here. We have, instead of the use forms compatibility, we have this use compatibility method, which is actually part of our application. So you can write these extensions yourself. You don't have to only use what's in the box. And so we've composed a bunch of the compatibility related things into a use compatibility extension. And this is, like I said, still within my application. So this is a nice way for you to keep your startup CS a little bit leaner and still, have the code you need. So we are using forms compatibility. And this is another method that's going, these 2 methods are going away. You're not going to need them anymore in preview 6, maybe preview 5. Preview 5 is actually, we're going to, I think, branch it and tag it tomorrow. So it's pretty much done. So
Cool.
You'll be getting it in the next week or so. And then we're doing this cool little thing here. So if you have legacy Xamarin.Forms code and you have custom renderers, you may be asking yourself, do I have to rewrite that stuff? And the wonderful, beautiful, amazing answer is no. You don't have to rewrite it. You can tell your employer you need to rewrite it if you want to, and then you can go do that work, but don't blame me because you actually don't need to rewrite it. But if you're looking for billable hours, I guess you could. So what's happening here is we're essentially saying, okay, for the handlers, for all the handlers in the Maui application, here are the specific renderers that I want you to use. So when, in particular, the reason that these are here for this weather application is because at the time that we wrote it, we didn't have an image button handler. So in order for me to actually have image buttons in the application, I needed to bring forward the image button renderers from the Xamarin.Forms compatibility. Everything from Xamarin.Forms landed in this package here. If it's not in this package, it's either in Maui controls or Maui controls compatibility. So if you're somebody who learns by hitting the period button and exploring APIs in your code, then these are going to be the places for you to look for those sorts of things. So your custom renderers would all end up being registered by hand like this. If you have a whole DLL, for example, I know that we've talked to some customers who have been using Xamarin.Forms for years and years. And so you have your own NuGet packages, your own assemblies, chock full of all the stuff that is themed for your particular company. And, you've got a lot invested in that. You can actually use this same method, point it specifically at your assembly, and we will go find all of your renderers and wire them up for you. So you don't have to write, if you get 100 of those controls, you don't have to write 100 lines of this stuff. So we will have documentation for all of that stuff. I know that.
That's nice.
Yeah, right.
We even get
documentation's good.
documentation.
We
I
have
was actually talking about finding all the renderers, but okay.
I got that.
We are actually in the process of writing documentation. All of the existing docs for Android and iOS that are part of Xamarin.Forms and the things that are fundamental to the platforms, those will all come up underneath the .NET MAUI .NET documentation. And so we're working on hosting those and going through the process of updating them and porting them. And we've actually got a bunch of Microsoft Learn content now being ported. So exciting stuff. All right. What would you like me to dig into next? I'll just ask because I could go a billion directions. Thoughts, questions? Does Daniel have any other questions or comments?
Daniel had to run. He might be back. Yeah, he might be back. We'll see. Migration tools.
Oh, yeah, migration. Great question. So I have another PowerPoint for that. So
you came prepared.
I came prepared because Maddie Legere, one of our program managers and my partner in crime, just gave a presentation yesterday for Dev Intersection in Orlando about this very topic. And so this is her hot off the presses slide deck for evolving your applications from Xamarin.Forms to .NET MAUI. So let's see here. I want to, because I just like to skip slides. So here's really where the gist of it all comes down to. It's this .NET Upgrade Assistant. So I'll play the video here. So this is the assistant utility, and this is all open source on GitHub that we announced, I guess, earlier this year at the .NET conference Focus on Desktop. And what this utility does is it helps you to modernize your, I guess it's the pre-.NET Core stuff and brings it up to .NET Core. And of course, now .NET 5 is really, I guess, the target that everybody shoots for with it. So what we're doing with this utility is we are upgrading it, we being the beautiful team that maintains it, not me. Nothing to do with this. But they're bringing it up to targeting .NET 6. So it's going to help you bring, especially your Xamarin projects, which are .NET Framework. It's going to help you bring them directly to .NET 6 by upgrading your CS Proj, upgrading your targets, making sure that you have all the new TFMs, the target framework monikers, because all of those things have changed. It is also going to utilize under the hood. It utilizes the try convert tool, which also does some additional migration steps for you. And so Sweeky, who works on our mobile customer advisory team, has been working with Maddie and with the Upgrade Assistant team to bring that Xamarin special knowledge to the table to provide that tool. So probably somewhere between Preview 5 and Preview 6, we'll have some public bits. Maybe Preview 6 is we just call it Preview 6, but I think it might be ready a little earlier than that. We'll have our first preview of this assistant for Xamarin developers. And this works for Xamarin Android, Xamarin iOS, Xamarin Mac, any Xamarin project. Also works for, of course, Xamarin.Forms. And we'll do some things to enable .NET MAUI as well. So yeah, here's all the things that it does. There's a slide for that.
That you didn't skip.
This is not going to do everything, but it's going to do the vast majority of the big steps for you, so you can focus on just modernizing your code. Things that I would recommend that you do today to make your applications ready. If you have a Xamarin Android, Xamarin iOS application, and you're not doing any cross-platform forms things with it, then you're in a really good spot, because we don't actually control those APIs. Those are all Apple and Google. So if something broke between what you have now and what you migrate to, that's probably their problem. Not their problem. That's their fault. So like, we're actually in Xcode season right now. We call it Xcode season. Apple just announced their WWDC stuff, shipped a new version of their first version of the Xcode. There was Xcode 13, iOS 15. Is that the versions I think we're at? So beta 1 of those things has dropped, and we do a diff of what we have for an API and what they just shipped to see what's broken, what's new, what's gone. And so far it looks pretty light. So that's good news. It's not going to be a massive change for developers, but you will need to, as always, with every new version of Apple's or Google's SDKs, you'll need to update. But for Xamarin.Forms code, preparing for .NET MAUI, my recommendation is to make sure that you're on Xamarin.Forms 5 and that you check your warnings and make sure that you're not using any of those obsoleted APIs. I mean, that's really the best you can do right now. And anywhere you possibly can, you may want to consider getting rid of custom renderers. We've closed the gap on a lot of the control APIs so that you hopefully don't need many custom renderers. The good news is you can use them. That's always been the great thing, in my opinion, about Xamarin.Forms, is that you can still use all of the native platform for what you need to do. And you get the benefit of that abstracted API for code sharing. So it's really up to you to decide where on that spectrum you put your application. Yeah. Let's see, what else does Maddie have in here? So you're going to go from Net Standard to a Net 6 project. You'll end up going from mono Android and mono iOS to Net 6 Android and Net 6 iOS. Really, all that stuff for Android and iOS for the underlying SDKs, that just all gets absorbed into .NET, and we just ship with a new name, which is Microsoft.NET Android iOS. That's the try convert utility. You could actually, if you were super, super eager and had some time to burn, and that's Sweeky's profile right there. You can go up to the try convert repo. It's all open source, and you can pull down the latest builds or clone it and start running some things yourself. So we have, she has an open issue and PR in the works. Or you could do what I do and just be super patient and wait for her to be done. But I've been migrating projects by hand myself. I've been going to the old samples to look at things like layouts and buttons and controls, and I've been porting those over by hand. It's really, especially for a sample, right? It's a straightforward process. The XML is different for your CS proj, but other than that, you change a couple of namespaces in your code, and everything just works. So
we all like that.
Right,
Things
right.
just
So this is a pretty fun example here. So that's your CS project before you convert. And you can see there's a lot of things in there. And that's your CS project after you convert.
No way.
Yeah. It's, and they named it the short form project, right? And you can tell why. Now that ... is a little bit, misleading. There obviously is some stuff in there, but you saw my CS project when I opened it up. It has a
Yeah.
lot of white space. It certainly was not as verbose as what you see over there. Yep. So there's that, and then that. We are working with third-party vendors to make sure that all of their libraries are ported, or at least they are unblocked so they can port their stuff. So no reason they shouldn't. Progress Telerik has already shipped their first set of controls. So they're your sponsor today, right? Did I hear that correctly?
They are.
Yeah, right.
They
So
are
good job,
always
Telerik team.
fast, and yeah, they're always so fast, and they do, and their support is amazing.
Yeah.
If you run into any issues, they give you a call.
Nice. Well, I just email Stefan or Sam and say what's up, and but not everybody can just email them directly like that. I get it. No, but they are fantastic, and I was really excited that we were able to work with them and help get that first. I didn't do anything about the release, but there was a lot of conversation. There's a lot of conversation that I facilitated by telling them to set up a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So without you, that would never happen.
Your words, not mine, man. Your words, not mine. No, obviously it would have happened. If anything, I probably slowed it down. Let's see here. Maddie says it won't be perfect. I think she's wrong. I think it will be perfect. I don't know what.
Depending on your
possible
project.
For me to present and troll the person who wrote the presentation when she's not even here to defend herself?
I think you just did.
Shameless. I'm shameless.
We can clip that and send it to her, though.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
You can. You should. She'll never let me live it down. So this is a great slide she put together. I will totally be stealing this for some of my presentations. So on the left-hand side here, what you have is essentially the Xamarin.Forms project, which is a shared project at the top, or a library, and then your application projects for Android and iOS. And you can imagine a Windows project. You can imagine a Mac project. So on the other side, however, is the single project. You can see that it's a whole lot cleaner, a whole lot nicer to work with, a lot less cognitive load, if you will.
Yes.
So this is something you can do yourself. We are not going to bake this into our tooling unless we have tons of time and Sweeky is like, I'm going to blow everybody's mind and I'm going to single projectify everybody's project. You don't, because the thing is like some people probably may prefer to keep multiple projects, for reasons, for code maintenance reasons, for whatever.
Crazy talk.
Well, if they have been working in the same environment for ages.
Yeah. And again, maybe they get paid by the line of code and by the number of projects.
That's true.
I don't know. I'm not here to take
how
money
many
out
characters?
Of right? You never know. So the shared project is really all your code. And then, did I click something wrong? Go forward. The Android, everything just gets nested in this Android folder. Yeah. And not everything, like we don't need some of that stuff. Some of that stuff was just cruft from Google. And so we've optimized some of those things as well. Same thing for iOS. Like you're not going to typically use asset catalogs. You still could use asset catalogs if you need them. That's the image and the localization and the text stuff that Apple provides.
What about Windows? I don't see Windows there.
Yeah, so we don't have Windows on the screen. You should talk to Maddie about that. You should let her know your displeasure at not seeing Windows. I don't know. And she even took this screenshot on a Windows machine. You can tell. I don't know. Should be there.
That's where you got your Windows.
So if I create a new project, I'm gonna have a Windows folder there. Do you understand that correctly?
So let's take a look at my Visual Studio here. That's a really good example.
I want a Windows folder.
Hey, that was a guest. That was a guest cameo right there from Olia. Did you see that? Olia. Do you guys know Olia?
No, I don't think so.
She manages the WPF and WinForms for
Oh,
.NET.
Oh,
Olia, what's her last name? Garvish? Gavrish. She's awesome. If you ever get to talk to her, she's now part of our team. So
nice.
she's now on the Maui team. All right. So I wanted to show you because you were talking about what about Windows? Well, let's look at this. So this is a single project solution, the weather app, but you can see that it's not just a single project. It's actually 3 projects. And that's super annoying when we call it single project. Somebody didn't get the branding memo. So what this actually is, the WinUI 3 project here is actually the application project. However, if you're looking at Preview 4 or even Preview 5, all of these are just linked files. It's a bit of an interim magic that we did to make this all work. This will all go away and be much less hacky when we actually ship it. But we've needed to work through some things with the Windows team to make this stuff all work together, right? Because this is our initiative as .NET. It wasn't really something that the Windows team conceived of, so we're asking them to help us make this an awesome experience, and they are doing that, which is awesome. It just takes a couple steps to get us there. So right now you get 3 projects for the price of one, but we're going to get rid of them. We're going to take them away slowly but surely. So in Preview 5, this project actually gets absorbed into this project. What this project is, and the reason that this project is the one that I'm running, is because it is the one that generates the MSIX and packages everything. Without this, it doesn't know how to install and run the weather app on my Windows machine. For Android and iOS and Mac OS, all that stuff is already all part and parcel of the same tool chain. So what we're working on doing is combining all these things. So like I said, in Preview 5, there will be 2 projects like that. And this WinUI project will do all the things that it does, plus this package project. And then hopefully by Preview 6, it'll just be this project, and all those WinUI things will just show up in a Windows folder, just like you have Android and everything else. So
I
just
like it.
further streamlining and reducing that cognitive load. Yeah. So
The Preview 5 is coming pretty
yeah,
soon,
like next
right?
week it should be out.
Yeah. How about Preview 6?
So it'll be the previews are once a month. The thing that
Oh.
really threw things off was Microsoft Build being at the end of the month. So that meant that we kind of held on to our Preview 4 stuff. Or in the case of the
Yeah.
Maui team, they just kept slamming workout and just kept enhancing Preview 4. But the runtime teams and the base class library teams, all their stuff was locked and loaded early in May. So yeah, it'll be once a month. I don't actually have the dates in front of me for
Once
when
a month
Preview 6
is quite fast anyway, so I'm happy with that answer.
Yeah, so we'll have, I think 7 previews is what we have planned, and then we'll start doing release candidates. So we're definitely getting
That's
pretty
exciting. That's soon.
closer and closer to the end here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, in terms of like, because I had asked earlier on, have you tried the previews? And Jimmy very honestly said that he had installed some things once upon a time, hadn't really done anything with it. And I think that's probably the right move, Jimmy, because that you're smart is the reason that you did that. And the reason I say that is because, as we have been moving code from Xamarin.Forms and improving it and optimizing it and adopting the new architecture, things are kind of in this middle state. And maybe a good way to demonstrate that is to let me bring up a beautiful website that everybody should have linked. I'll do a couple of cool websites. So when you can do it, maybe you can't. No, I don't want to stop sharing. Weird. Oh, look at that. Wait, exit page. Wait. Should we wait? Never had that happen before. Edge. All right. So this is the Maui samples repo. So definitely recommend folks check that one out. But what I actually want to show you is the Maui repo or mall. Did I just type mall? That's hilarious.
That's a completely different.
I don't know. What is it? Let's find out.
I don't know.
Boy, I've really put Edge to the test here, haven't I? There we go. Yes. You saw that change, but my text didn't go anywhere. Oh, it's really not happy. All right. So on the Maui repo, oh goodness, really? What is your problem? We can blame StreamYard, but I won't. Do
Yeah, that's
that.
probably.
If I close other tabs,
I'm
Good
posting
chat.
the URLs in the chat rooms for now, so at least we have that. There we go. Someone might be able to look at it.
eventually. So I wonder. Let's just do this. I have Chrome. I don't even have Chrome on this machine. What else is on this machine? There's a
Please
different
don't quit Edge.
Oh, no, yeah, no, not yet. For everybody who's wondering why not, it's because that's how we're actually streaming.
It is.
So GitHub.
And sometimes you find out the hard way.
All right. All right, here we go. This is gonna work. Just had to go to the non-canary version. So
You're running
in the
old
wiki.
builds? What's up with that?
Actually, I find usually it's the other way around on my machine.
Yeah.
The non-canary version hangs, but the canary does not.
Yeah, I've been having some weird Edge things lately, and I also upgraded my Mac to Monterey, the new version of Mac OS. Yeah, it doesn't run
Preview bits
very
all
well.
over.
Yeah, I do. I'm living dangerously right now. So we do have a roadmap here, and I will be updating the roadmap as soon as we. Yeah, there we go. I will be updating this as soon as we kind of lock down what our Preview 5 actually ships. So you can see we had a lot planned, and plans often go awry. So not everything in this list actually made Preview 5. So I'll update this, and the things that didn't make it will end up down here in Preview 6. And you can see this is the roadmap of what's shipping when, generally, what month they're going to ship in. But the cooler thing here is if you look at the status page, Javier updates this pretty regularly. So as of 4 hours ago, you can see per control, per property, per platform, where do things stand in terms of readiness. So
that is transparency.
Thank you.
We
Trying to be
appreciate
as
that.
transparent as possible.
Yeah.
So we do have some controls here like the carousel view and the collection view, which are just a bunch of these triangles saying that we haven't started them. And those are quickly going to turn into big green check marks because they don't really benefit a ton from porting them to handlers. So we're just going to wholesale bring them over as renderers and then call that done for .NET 6. And we'll look towards improving that for .NET 7. As a matter of fact, one of my teammates, I think it was just yesterday, asked, so when do we start planning .NET 7? We're very focused, obviously, on .NET 6, but the reality is we really kind of are starting to plan .NET 7.
Yeah.
And it's going to start with the things that didn't quite make it into .NET 6. So we're definitely planning ahead. But yeah, so Jimmy, there's a lot of things here that you would not have had success using.
Yeah.
But if you had an application full of labels, you'd have been in good.
There you go.
You'd have had a lot of success. So you can check this out, and it's not just the controls down here at the bottom. You can get a sense for some of the features. In particular, animation and view transforms are coming in. They were there kind of partially. Animations were there partially in Preview 4. But Preview 5 animations should be pretty close to done. Borders and brushes are coming very soon. I think brushes are pretty close to being done. So anyway, you get a real good sense of exactly where things stand. And then hopefully not too far into the future, we'll just have a page full of big green check marks. And everybody will be like, sweet. And then we'll spend the last 2 months of the cycle working on bug fixing and quality and performance tuning and trimming.
And .NET 7.
And then, well, I'll get ahead of the engineering team and I'll start planning out .NET 7. Apparently people want to take vacations too. I don't know what that's all about.
What?
I know.
Crazy.
Yeah. All right. So I think that
That is
covers,
cool.
for the most part, a lot of what I had prepared, which when I say prepared, that means it's just at my fingertips. Happy to take any questions or go down some rabbit holes if you'd like.
Okay, so I have a very weird, oddly specific question.
Yes.
Let's say that I want to play a sound and I want to pan that in different speakers. Would that be possible?
I see what you're doing.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Is those bits in there right now?
That's a good question. To have a cross-platform API that does that, I'm wondering if we have exposed anything in Essentials yet that does this. I'm looking. You know the answer? Are you
No. He just wants to make an application, which I'm assuming is on the Android platform because we have a car that runs on Android.
I just got a new home workout machine that runs on Android.
Nice.
Yeah, as soon as that thing loaded up, I was like, oh, this is Android. I wonder what I could do with this besides void my warranty.
That's how I convinced Jimmy to get the brand car we have. We have a Polestar 2. It's an app. It's a Google platform. He's like, I'm in.
I can develop for it. That was the first thing I did when we were in a showroom, and so I sat down and I started tapping the version. So it's 4 clicks left to be unlock the developer mode. I want to see if this is working. Sadly, or maybe not sadly, they don't allow to sideload application into the car.
It is a very powerful car. It's heavy. It's fast. I think it's a good choice.
Sideload.
Yeah, no. I think there's a slight security risk sideloading applications like that. But hey.
So Essentials does not have a sound player, but it looks like Zammy has answered this question for you, Leomaris Reyes. So she has the Zam plugin Simple Audio Player. Now, does it do panning between speakers?
That is the big question.
Doesn't? Well, no, it has balance.
There you go.
I would imagine balance probably does it.
Yeah.
There you go.
You're a happy camper.
I am.
There you go. I chatted it to you in the private chat. You can.
Awesome.
Thank you. We also have a question. Have you tried converting any bigger Xamarin.Forms project? Like, for instance, the eShop sample application?
So I have not tried porting anything larger than some of my samples, which are, just like a dozen pages in some cases, like my control gallery and Zappy and some stuff like that. So the next step for us is to try something like eShop. We're also gathering other large samples, and Squeaky will be working through migrating those. I think we wouldn't be surprised if really the first big stumbling block is going to be third-party dependencies. Because once you start needing some of those, like net standard stuff may for the most part work, net 5 stuff may for the most part work, even if they're not built for .NET 6. But just depends on how modernized those libraries already are as to whether they just work out of the box. We're definitely encouraging library maintainers and third-party maintainers to upgrade everything to include the .NET 6 target frameworks. One thing we did actually just have a conversation about this morning that kind of relates to this is I believe it was specific to XUnit, but this really applies to any NuGet package. But the order of resolution, so like when you bundle a NuGet package, you basically say, okay, you should work with .NET Core, you should work with .NET Standard 2.1, you should work with, right? And you name all those target frameworks that you should work with. And so we have those for Xamarin iOS and Xamarin Android, and now we have .NET 6 and .NET 5. And so there's an order of priority where it first checks and says, do you have the latest? I'm running a .NET 6 application. I would like you to give me a .NET 6 version assembly. Do you have that in the NuGet package? And it says, no, I don't have that. And so then it goes to the next one and says, okay, do you have a .NET 5 one? No, I don't have that one. Then it says, do you have a .NET Core one? And the thing is that .NET Core and .NET 5, for that matter, don't work with Android and iOS. We never had a .NET 5 version. We went straight from .NET Standard to .NET 6. And so what happened with XUnit is that they have a .NET Core, but we can't get to the .NET Standard version because it stops at .NET Core. And the XUnit package from NuGet says, I've got that. Here you go. And then the application says, can't use it because I'm running on Android or iOS. So anyway, I anticipate that a lot of time and effort is going to go into encouraging people to upgrade their libraries so that we don't run into those problems, but also finding ways that we can bust our way through these stupid rules. I mean, they're still I like having force options myself. Like that's one of the reasons. And when an IDE or a tool gives me that option to go -- force, I'm like, sweet, let's do that. Like I know what I'm doing in this particular case. I don't always know what I'm doing, but may want to do that. So, once we get through some other projects, we'll know better what kinds of things we're going to deal with. So eShops is definitely one of those that Sweeky is going to look to migrate. eShops is a bit of a pain in the butt because it has some Azure dependencies and things like that. So it's not just getting the application up and running. It's got a bunch of other stuff, but it is more of a real world thing, right? Because your applications, the customer's applications likely have similar situations.
Cool. I'm excited about this.
Yeah, especially now when you found out about the sound thingy.
Yeah. The only thing, I've been tampering a little bit with Xamarin before, but I never really liked that Windows or UWP was a second grade citizen. It maybe worked, maybe not, but this I'm excited about.
Yeah.
Well, and
you will get your Windows folder.
I know, right?
You get your Windows folder. I love having the desktop available too, because one of the bigger struggles that we've had over the years is getting emulators and simulators set up for new developers, right? Like if you don't know what you're doing, that can be a nasty path to go down, and you can have a lot of failure there. And if you're not hyper motivated to succeed, you may quit. So having now desktop as a first class citizen on both platforms to be able to do your day in and day out development, I think is going to make for us much smoother getting started experience, and also a faster developer experience just day in and day out. So even if the Windows or the Mac isn't your first target, and we hear this from developers all the time, you still will prefer to develop against that because it builds faster, it runs faster. You can resize that window to kind of look like whatever you need it to look like. And then later on, you pull up an Android device or an iOS device and you kind of just confirm that things are the way that you hope that they are. And then you ship it and you send off your invoice and you get paid and you take a long vacation in the Black Sea or something. I don't know.
I remember vacations. No, I don't. I remember traveling, though.
Yes.
Soon.
We just traveled. I just traveled last weekend. Yeah.
Nice.
We drove down to the middle of nowhere, Missouri, and went to Branson, Missouri, which I guess is now known for some live shows and some Americana country music, which I'm not a country music fan at all. But,
but they do have it.
Yeah, they do have it. My parents had just spent like 4 days at a bluegrass festival there, and then my cousin got married, and nobody got sick. We're all vaccinated.
That's
So
nice. That's nice. Yeah, we're a little bit behind. I have gotten my first shot. Jimmy's waiting for his, but soon.
good. Well, I hope it goes smoothly for you. Everything was fine with us here, and we were very fortunate to get it as soon as we did. I guess seemed like it took forever, but then hear how things are going over the pond over there.
Yeah,
And, seems
yeah,
like it's
we're
the same.
amazed because it started out seemingly better in Europe, but you guys just I don't even know how you did that. It I mean, yeah, that's
Yeah, we're still
impressive.
lagging in terms of percentage wise. Like my state is still pretty low percentage wise for the population, but I don't know. We've done our part, so we can just encourage everybody else to do their part, and then we can start
Yeah.
traveling again. It's all for me. It's not all about the travel, but
No, of course not. But we still miss people, our friends. Most of our
Yeah.
friends are speakers that we only meet at conferences,
yeah,
which is not somewhere we have been
No.
lately.
No.
So it's not about the travel itself, I guess.
Yeah.
It's nice as well, but there's the whole community thing. And our meetup is obviously on Twitch nowadays, so we don't get to meet everybody. And
is
yeah,
that where we are right
sometimes
now? Are we on Twitch right now?
we are on Twitch right now.
I didn't know
And
where I
we
was.
will be on YouTube.
I'm just in Edge.
You're in Edge, yeah. Until you quit.
Yes. Well, and clearly it needs a refresh. It needs a reboot.
Yeah. Sometimes computer does that
Yeah.
or needs that. Well, this was awesome.
Yeah. So we have Maui .NET Preview 5 coming up next week.
And you're taking vacation days now.
Yes. I should definitely do that.
Where are you going for holiday? Well, Maui. Not Maui.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Nice. Loophole.
There you
Yes,
go.
yes. Well, we need to figure out how we can host a Microsoft conference down there. Maybe it's a
Ooh.
.NET specific conference or something. Certainly everybody would be
approve.
in favor of that. I see no reason
Yes.
we couldn't do that.
So .NET Conf in Maui then.
.NET
There we
Conf in
go.
Maui. Oh, wouldn't that be wonderful? Well, we can certainly at least theme the virtual studio. So that's the problem is that the .NET Conf is actually a virtual conference already.
Yeah.
So, but maybe
Things
build
But we
can
can have
change.
a viewing party
Ooh.
in Maui.
Nice.
Or is it on Maui?
I don't know.
On
In
the
Maui.
island. Yeah. Well, everybody knows what I'm saying, I hope. Nobody understands. Well, this has been fun.
Cool.
Thank you so much for joining
Yeah,
us
that
and
Yep. Thanks for having me.
Go
Thanks for hanging
do
out.
Maui stuff. Go do Maui stuff.
Everybody go check it out. Download Preview 5 next week. Fire up a new .NET new Maui application from your command line. Run it from your Visual Studio. Make sure you follow the getting started guides. Don't go off the rails and think you know what you're doing. Still previews. There's
Did you
still
hear
some-
that? Did you
Yeah,
hear that? He-
you're breaking up. I can
yeah. Don't be like Jimmy. That's the
No.
key here.
Not recommended.
But I really like that when installing Maui, there's some great tools that really helps and sets everything up.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
a huge help.
Yeah, we didn't really talk about what the installation acquisition experience is going to be because that's still actually in the works in terms of how you install and get up and going. But for the moment, yeah, we have the MauiCheck.net tool, which will check your system for OpenJDK, for Android emulators, Android and iOS SDKs and dependencies. It'll also go get all the .NET runtime things you need, the BCL. I say runtime things as if there's like many. The .NET runtime, the BCL. It'll also get your local SDKs and then obviously get your Maui bits and your templates. And it does, it's like just a big old smart tool that does all that stuff for you. It can keep you up to date. You can actually get the current preview and then we have it configured to pull from the next preview also. So that's how I got my system in this beautiful preview 4, preview 5 land of confusion right now. So yeah, it's a cool tool. I think that tool will stick around for quite a bit, because even once we get to the .NET installer with the workloads that we have, and when you start using Visual Studio from a command line, at least, it's still the only tool that will go do all those other dependencies. The .NET installer is only going to care about .NET things, whereas the MAUI check tool is going to care about Android things, all the third-party stuff.
That makes sense.
Cool. Yeah, we got your back.
Sweet.
We got you. We use these tools too, so I think we wrote them for ourselves. And I say we wrote them. John Dick wrote that one. I think he told me, he said once upon a time, yeah, I've probably written this like 4 or 5 times and just never finished it. So now we have it, and it's the MAUI check tool.
Awesome.
Cool.
And on that note,
Yeah, what are we doing next week?
next week I think it is part 2 of the file new Blazor project we're doing.
More Blazor.
More Blazor. We like it. We need to check our backlog. We need to update that. And we need to configure our design and stuff. Configure your design? Is that what you say?
Might be a thing.
It is now.
I'm not a designer. Maybe that's the lingo. I don't know. All right. So see you next week.
Bye, everyone.